I think everything's good.
Okay, the time has finally come, the one that this room has been packed and waiting for. Welcome everyone to SACPA's 58th year as a not-for-profit society. Again, just a gentle reminder to please silence your cell phones or put them on vibrate. My name is Shelby Zubak and I will be your moderator for this very passionate session today. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people and the Canadian Plains, and we pay respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. SACPA offers respect to the Métis and all who have lived on this land and made this area their home. So I'm sure a few of you have been here before, but I'll go over our session format for today. So we will have about 25 to 30 minutes for the presentation and as well as for the Q&A. We'll finish somewhere around 1, probably a little after from the looks of this room. Written questions from named individuals can be sent to myself before and during Q&A if you don't want to come up here yourselves. If you do have any questions, I'm going to switch it a little bit and ask that you line up along the stage here, and then we'll be able to forward your questions from there. And without further ado, let's get into what we're talking about. So it's my pleasure to introduce Tom Sinclair, author, former Calgary MLA, and the man here to speak on Alberta, America's 51st state. Do you want Alberta to join the United States? Please join me in welcoming Tom Sinclair.
Thank you. I just want to remind all of you here that she forgot to mention that I'm the world's best basketball player from Lethbridge. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here with you all today, back in my hometown of Lethbridge. You know, I'm always reminded when I travel of where I come from. I can think of a time when I was at the embassy, the Russian embassy in Moscow. And you know what they do in those sort of places, you stand around and drink and talk. And I could hear the people behind me talking about the longest, highest bridge in the world. And I said, oh my God, I know that bridge, I'm from there. I didn't talk to them, I didn't want to blow my cover by letting them know I was from Lethbridge. Another place I was in the undersecretary, I can't remember which undersecretary it was, in Washington, D.C. And we're getting along well. And in his office, he had a mantle there with all his trophies. And one of the trophies was a stuffed pheasant. And I said, oh, I'm from a place in Canada where hunting pheasants is quite popular. And he says, yeah, I know. I shot that bird at Welling, Alberta. Well, we're getting along well enough. I thought I could pose a question to him. I said that, you know, we in Canada see this vast market down here in the United States. And a lot of people think that we ought to annex the United States. And he said, without skipping a beat, he said, well, that's fine, as long as you take California first.
Yeah, otherwise I would have been really.
Now, the reason I'm here is not to think about these old things, but it's to talk about the future of our country. We're going to be asked the question on October 19th, what we want to do with this country. And it doesn't matter what the wording is in this referendum October 19th. It'll all boil down to one thing, and that is whether or not Alberta will become part of the United States in the future. Now, this isn't the first time I've thought about this. I was here some years ago, your guest, thank you very much, and I'm very honored to be here again today, to talk about my grandfather, Mike Mountain Horse. And at the time, I was writing about what it meant to be a Canadian. And now when I look back on this book, I understand what Mike Mounthorse was telling me and talking about. This is the book I wrote then. And when I look back on this book and read, this book is solely and simply about what it means to be a Canadian. The values we have, the rights and responsibility. Our rights and responsibilities and other things as well, if I could ever remember this. Now, I'm here today because I've written another book. And it deals with the question we're facing right now. And that is this referendum question, October 19th. And it doesn't matter what the question, how it's worded. It will come down to that one thing. This is the second book. And until I finished it, I didn't realize that it was just part B of the first book that I wrote. This book is called The Russian Ballerina and the Alberta Separation Referendum. Now, you kind of have to wonder what a Russian ballerina has to do with the Alberta Separation Referendum. Well, I kind of wonder that myself. Now, in showing you this book, I'm not encouraging you to buy it. What I do is try to encourage you not to buy it. And the reason for that is that every time someone buys this on Amazon, Amazon sends me a bill for 38 cents. So if this book becomes a big seller, every time it's sold, I have to pay them Amazon 38 cents. I could be broke before you know it. So whatever you do, don't buy this book. But what I'm going to do is leave this book, as well as the other one, with New Peterson up front here, and ask him to circulate it above the members, and you can read it as you like. Now, I'm not too sure what the details are in this book, but maybe I can recount a few of them. The Russian ballerina is the ballerina that came to Ottawa for a co-education. Who is that guy? Thank you, I'm sorry. The Russian ballerina was a ballerina that came to Ottawa on a co-educational exchange. And after the presentation, she left and slipped on the ice and broke her ankle. Now, for another ballerina to break her ankle, that's the end of her career. She subsequently got involved with a small-time mafia man in Estonia. And the small-time mafia man had an idea about making some money. Fortunately, at the time, there was a Canadian consultant there from Calgary who could help her. He's being paid $2,000 a day to help this Estonian mafia woman. And the deal was, winter, Estonia was poor and freezing, so Germany donated a shipload of number one fuel oil to heat them in the winter. Well, this mafia guy knew that number one fuel oil had a high value. So what he did is he went to Moscow and bought a shipload of number 5 fuel oil, which didn't have much value at all. And he ran his ship down to Estonia and switched the Russian fuel oil for the German fuel oil. And then sailed away and brokered it to Israel. He made $500,000 on this. Now that's just a small deal for the mafia. But the mafia in Russia, the brat there, thought, well, this guy could do that. Maybe he can help us do something. And so he sent the mafia down to Calgary with this woman to get in touch with this Canadian consultant to help them get a shipload of methanol from Kitimat through the Panama Canal. Well, that's fine. It went fine until the boat got to Panama, and the Panama officials found out that it wasn't Canadian methanol, it was Chinese methanol. And the Americans didn't want an American ship going through the Panama Canal. So they got hooked up on that deal, and they end up and tried to finagle it with the Canadians' help to buy a new ship to get through the Panama Canal. But that didn't work out too well, and so the mafia ended up looking for the Canadian consultant and this Russian ballerina to get their money back. Well, I won't go into the details about that, but it became a great big mess. From there, I haven't read that book yet, so I'm not quite sure from where. But anyway, it got into a big mess, and you had the mafia after the Canadian consultant who hooked up with an indigenous person from the reserve who sheltered him while the mafia was looking for him. Well, that didn't work out too well. But while the ballerina was in Calgary, she hooked up with a chief executive officer of an oil company that was owned by a Dallas oil company, whose chief executive officer had become the Undersecretary of Commerce in Washington, D.C. So the mafia figured that maybe we could get more information, beneficial information, from this Undersecretary of Commerce through his son in Calgary. And so she hooked up with the chief executive officer's son in Calgary to kind of smooth things up. Anyway, if you get to read this book, maybe you'll figure out what I'm trying to tell you. No, you just told me here's something you can talk about. This is a petition for a watershed. Oh, let's try this one.
10 minutes. 10.
This book has two parts to it. The first part is about the character development, the characters that are in this book. And the second part is about the Alberta Separation Referendum. Now, these contexts or these international connections are important for the storyline here because you've seen this book held up as I come by here. You have the title, and then you have an old pump jack on the cover. And it illustrates the importance of oil to the international connections right now. There's two labels here. Each one represents 10 years. 10 years is the amount of time left in the oil that the United States has. You figure this out by some smart guys go around and dig a hole, and have geologists there look down there and say, yep, there's a barrel of oil down there. So they figure out that's how much oil there is. And then you look at how much oil they consume each year. So you divide one by the other. And this lady keeps nodding her head, so I must be making some kind of sense. So for comparison purposes, here's three labels. 5 years. This is China. China has about 15 years of oil left. Here's Russia. There's 4 labels there. That's 20 years. Russia has 20 years of oil left. Who do you think this red guy is? You're kind of right. There's Canada. Canada has about 90 years of crude oil left. Now, I left one guy out here, the green guys. This is Russia. Russia has about 20 years of oil left. Now then, you look at the Americans here, these guys here, compared to these guys here. Who do you think has the greatest interest in Alberta's oil reserves? These big red guys here is Canada. Here's America. America has always, in their game planning, considered Alberta to be their strategic reserve. That is ever since the Second World War. If their offshore oil supplies were interrupted, they felt they could always turn to Canada's oil sands here. So when we're sitting up here in Alberta now, having a referendum on our independence, who do you think has taken an interest in this over here? The Americans would like nothing more than to see Alberta declare independence. Now, the Russians' interest is this: if Alberta became independent and in the long term became part of the United States, then Russia would have a northern border with Canada. And Russia has already planted its flag on the Canadian seaboard in the north. So what do you think the Russian interest is? The Russian interest in our referendum is not to have it pass. So they will do what they can do to make it not pass. The Americans, on the other hand, will do whatever they can to make it pass, because they can see the oil coming to their sphere of interest. Now, we've got this other bunch over here, China. China owns a major proportion of our Alberta oil sands. So China's sitting back there looking at America coveting our oil and our independence, and Russia looking at us as being the boundary between us and the Americans. So that's the problem we're facing here with a referendum. This isn't just us sitting here going to decide the fate of North America or the world. We've got three major countries here, three world powers looking at what's going to happen here. Now, one of the jobs I had was in Czechoslovakia. And it was at the time that the Czechoslovakians, along with other Soviet countries, were fighting for their independence. And I was there with the students marching in Charles Square. When it was all over, the students had enough money from their campaigning to buy me a brand new Skoda automobile. Now you're laughing over there because you know where those students got that money, and you're nodding your head. They got that money from the United States. I was in Croatia when the Americans were trying to overthrow the Croatian government because they were acting contrary to the American policy. I was working for them, and I was handing out groceries on behalf of the United States to voters to overthrow their government. I was in Panama when the United States invaded that country and kidnapped the president. The United States, just kidnapped the president in Venezuela. The bottom line of what I'm telling you is that I know from practical experience what the Americans want. They will take it. If they can't get it legally, they will take it. The Russians will have their bratria in Alberta, trying to convince Albertans to stay in Canada, you can imagine. The CIA will be in Alberta, trying to make us vote for independence. The Chinese will be using this bargaining chip with their ownership in the oil sands for Taiwan. So this referendum we have is not just for our own benefit in the long term. There are other countries that are very interested in what's going to happen here. I, as an economist, have tried to figure this out the last 2 years. I've looked at these numbers and that numbers, but I cannot get the answer for that. There might be an accountant in this room, not an accountant. And there's no cartoon you'll see about accountants where there will be two accountants before the boss, and they're asking the boss, what would you like us to show this year, a profit or a loss? Well, as an accountant, I can analyze this referendum independence situation. And I can tell you that if we join the United States, we will be incredibly financially better off. Now, I'm quoting the referendum people when I say that. I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just saying that as an economist, I can add up the numbers to show you that it would be better to be in the United States. But also I can add up the numbers and show you that we would be just as well off in Canada. So it's going to come down to you when you mark your ballot on October 19th to look at these statistics. And I hope that your conclusion will be that there's no authoritative answer that is decisive and conclusive about which country we should be in, Canada or the United States. So what it comes down to is beyond statistics. It comes down to beyond money. What it comes down to is the deep cultural ties we have with one another. And there's no place in the world that you'll find more varied and diverse cultural ties binded as strongly together than in Canada. I have a line that I like to use when I conclude my talk about this. Oh, is it in here? Wow. I don't even have to remember it. I can read it. I'll put a smaller one. Is there a smaller one here I can read? I can't read this whole thing. No. Let me try this. My grandfather, Mike Mountainhorse, in the spirit of my grandfather, Mike Mountainhorse, embrace this Canadian home. Take it to your heart. It's your home. It's my home. It's our home. Our home represents our values, tolerance, and respect. We share these values, these riches, and then we leave a little of ourselves, just as others before did for us. Embrace this Canadian home. Take it to your heart. And it will make your heart strong like a mountain. spirited like a horse, and soared like a hawk. Thank you so very much for having me back to my hometown.
Thank you so much, Tom, for that exploration, we'll call it. Before we get into the Q&A session, I will just want to mention that SACPA memberships are encouraged and available at $30 a year. LSCO memberships are also useful and encouraged. Neither are required to attend the sessions, but they do help support putting events on like this. A suggestion box is available for audience ideas and comments as well. And donations are much appreciated, and for that purpose, there are little jars speckled throughout the room if you want to drop some change. LSCO is kindly providing this room for free of charge, and if you'd like, I hope that you did get a chance to patronize their lunch counter. It's open throughout the week as well. Thank you to the U of L and Rogers TV and Tango Media for their valuable support, and of course to the Lethbridge Herald and other media for their coverage. Next week, we'll have Chris Galloway from Friends of Medicare, what's happening in Alberta healthcare, possibly tied to this week's session. It's at this time that I'll invite anyone with short questions to please come and line up along the stage. We're going improv style today. If there are any questions that you don't want to come up and ask, if you can file them to the front of the room, kind of classroom style, I'd be happy to ask them on your behalf. Anyone first? Sure.
How do our oil reserves stack up against Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and Iran? Oh, Maureen Hawkins.
That's a good question. Canada ranks number 4 in terms of reserves in the world. And before us is Venezuela, I think is number 1. And I think their reserves are about 33 years, if I recall correctly. And then there's Saudi Arabia, and then there's Canada. But a lot of this depends on how you add up the numbers, because I'm talking about what are known as proven reserves. That is, geologists and seismologists have decided quite well that this is how much oil is there. If the price were to double from $50 a barrel today, you'll see a change in these things, because at $50 a day, it's not as economical to develop the oil as it would be at $100 a day. The change will be somewhat, but the relationship will be like it is here today. Dear gentlemen, I don't take questions from guys bigger than me.
Thank you, Ken Sears. This was quite an informative talk, but it led me a couple of technical questions. The first one is, you were talking about oil reserves per nation, and the 90 for Canada, the 10 for the United States. Is that for the oil reserves as they are consumed internally within America? Is it simply consumed internally plus exports? Because that does make some significant difference. The second question I have regarding this, it's quite clear that there's a transition in the energy economies right now. The Chinese are, from everything I've read, shifting quite dramatically over to alternative energies. Is that going to have an impact upon this larger equation.
Yeah, that's right. Have a tree. Yeah, that's right. If I got a tree, who has a tree? Oh, I need a tree. A tree or $2,000.
Yeah.
Rich, very much.
Your first question, sir, in regard to import exports. These things, this is domestic consumption I'm talking about, and domestic reserves. America today imports 60% of its oil from Canada. So if they have that dependence today, and given the person who's the president of the United States, he's not going to have much reservation about getting oil from America, whichever way he can get. That's the unfortunate thing that we have today. And the second part of your question was, will these estimates change much over the future with changing circumstances like wind power and solar power and things like that? Well, it's hard to predict the future, but yes, they will. But there's nothing in the next 50 years that are going to change the circumstances in which we now find ourselves. You cannot change our lifestyle in the flick of a switch. There isn't one thing in this room that we are wearing, that we are eating, that we are enjoying, that does not have some aspect of oil in it. You can't immediately take us away and say no more oil. But there will be things in the future. And as an economist, I have this bad habit of looking into the future. We know what happens in the past. But to say what is going to happen in the future, who knows? But I'm going to go on the limb and say this is going to happen in the future. All this oil today is going to be replaced by something else. Just as coal at one time replaced oil. In the future, I don't know what it will be, but I'm going to guess at something like this. We all know what our batteries look like in our watch and our smartphones. Size of the dime. I will bet you in 100 years, we will all have a source of energy for our cars, for our heating, for our food, everything else. Not from a barrel of oil, but from a battery, no larger than a street. And if I'm wrong in making that forecast, I bet it's that the tree is too large. It's going to be smaller than that. Thank you for that question. Where's that big guy?